The first warning didn't come from satellites or governments, it came from a kid in Arizona filming strange lights in the sky on a cracked phone. 2 hours later, Beijing went dark. 3 hours after that, the United Nations received a transmission in perfect English. Humanity will be pacified within the hour. Surrender is mercy, resistance is extinction. They weren't lying about their intent, just their timing. By then I'd already lost contact with my squad. They came fast, efficient, not monsters, worse. Calculated minds behind synthetic eyes, speaking in sterile voices as they vaporized city blocks like they were pressure washing a sidewalk. No glory, no negotiation, just extermination. I was pinned behind the remains of a grocery store in St. Paul, rifle shaking. In my hands, the air thick with static and ash. Corporal Jensen had bled out next to me, his face still twisted in shock. They'd hit him mid-sentence. No time for last words, no time for heroics. That's the thing they didn't get about us. They thought we'd fight with honor, protocol, morals. They didn't know what kind of bastards war had made us. When the transmission hit the world's networks, our governments were already gone. Command lines shattered, satellites hijacked, nuclear silos turned to molten steel. But humans, we don't fall like governments do. We don't wait for orders. We don't need a chain of command to do what has to be done. I was just a combat engineer, ex-Navy, dishonorably discharged, broken spine patched with cheap carbon plates, and an addiction to combat stems, the kind of guy recruiters stopped calling. But in that moment, in the rubble, in the chaos, they needed someone like me. I dragged Jensen's corpse behind a fridge, took his tags, took his detonator. Then I started running toward the nearest drop zone. The Council's war drones didn't understand guerrilla warfare. They had air superiority, yes. Weapons that could turn bone to vapor, yes. But they didn't understand hate, not the way humans feel it, not the kind of hate that burns clean through fear. In the war room of the Galactic Council, they watched us with cold calculation, predicting a complete surrender within 4 hours. They'd studied our wars, our history, our weakness for peace. They figured we'd panic. What they didn't calculate was what would happen if we didn't. At the Minnesota border, I met up with 2 Rangers and a retired steelworker who turned his basement into a damn weapons lab. Homemade railguns, pulse disruptors built from microwave coils. None of it was legal. All of it was lethal. We didn't ask each other's names. There wasn't time for that. The war wasn't organized. It didn't follow stages or strategy. It was 1,000 little moments of madness. Improvised ambushes, suicide charges, kids throwing Molotovs from rooftops, while drone swarms torched suburbs. And then something happened. They started dying, not us, them. Not just 1 or 2. Dozens. Then hundreds. They'd underestimated the sheer density of human resistance. Cities weren't just settlements, they were death traps. Every basement a bunker, every sewer line a highway. They'd landed there. Forces in the largest population centers, thinking it would make control easier. It made the slaughter faster. And that's when the real break came. I still remember the second transmission from the Council, piped through hijacked frequencies. Unexpected resistance acknowledged. This delay does not change the outcome. Human defiance is statistically insignificant. That was minute 47. By minute 55, we'd cracked their command frequency. By minute 59, we'd hacked into their fleet's own targeting system. And by minute 63, just over an hour after they declared our surrender, we wiped their entire assault fleet from low orbit, using their own cannons. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we refused to die the way they expected. The skies were quiet again. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence of something much worse. The silence right before a second wave. I stood among twisted metal, the black husks of enemy craft still smoldering around me, and all I could think was, they're going to come back angry. They always do. The humans who fought in the first hour were a strange breed, survivors, rogues, exiles. I don't think a single one of us gave a damn about politics or patriotism. None of us fought for a flag. We fought because there was no one else left. We fought because surrender wasn't a concept we carried in our blood. In those first 63 minutes, Earth burned. Yes, but what burned brighter was unpredictability. That was the real weapon. And now the Council knew it. The official governments were down, but pockets of resistance were starting to pulse like fresh blood through dead veins. Some idiot from a Denver tech startup built a drone fleet from racing quads and garage parts. A retired Indian general coordinated citywide blackouts to throw off enemy scanners. In Tokyo, a samurai club, the kind of cosplay group you'd laugh at a week ago, was rumored to have taken down an enemy mech with reinforced katanas and high explosive grenades strapped to their chests. None of it made sense on paper. But that's the thing. Humans don't win wars on paper. I regrouped with the same trio I'd fought alongside near the drop zone. They never gave names, and I never asked. The steelworker, he had arms like steel, cables, and a voice like gravel, was nicknamed Forge. The two Rangers, one had a limp and a cold stare. We called him Ghost. The other talked too much, chewed gum while loading plasma rounds, and smiled every time something exploded. Trigger. Forge had set up a temporary stronghold inside a ruined subway station. No lights, just emergency generators, handheld EMP blasters, and 3D printed frag grenades stacked like soda cans. The air smelled like burnt copper and blood. We bought ourselves time, Forge said, sitting on an overturned metal crate. But they'll adapt. They always do, I muttered. Council doesn't underestimate the same species twice. Ghost leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Then we give them something new to underestimate. That became the unofficial motto of what we started next. The Council didn't understand guerrilla warfare. Not really. They'd never fought an enemy that didn't follow rules. Their entire structure was based on precision, efficiency, logic. Our first counterattack was anything but. Trigger and I hit a supply node the aliens had dropped outside of Chicago. They'd constructed a geometric storage unit, flawless in design, invisible to our primitive radar. What they didn't know was that a teenager had captured its cloaking flicker on a live stream while skateboarding past it. That footage went viral in underground networks. It took us 12 hours to plan, 3 to infiltrate, 46 seconds to destroy it. We didn't use elite tech. We used agricultural drones rigged with Fertilizer bombs, the kind banned during the last human conflict because they were too unpredictable. Perfect. The blast sent shockwaves through the Chicago ruins, cracked 100 windows, and created a blue fireball, visible from miles. I still remember the stunned silence in our comms afterward, until Trigger laughed like a man possessed. "They're going to call this terrorism," he said. "No," I replied, wiping blood from my eyes. "They're going to call this human." Back on the council flagship, they didn't react with fear, they reacted with recalculations, data fed into cold alien minds, into their synthetic neural nets. They tried to understand why humans refused logic. They ran projection simulations. They still didn't get it because we weren't following survival instinct anymore. We weren't fighting to live, we were fighting to make them bleed, to punish, to avenge. That level of emotion doesn't show up on their models. They didn't have a protocol for it, so they deployed the enforcers, not machines, not soldiers. Something in between, biosynthetic hunters, fast, quiet, programmed for psychological dismantling. The first reports came from London. Civilians disappeared in broad daylight. Entire squads gutted, never fired a shot. They left behind messages etched into walls with plasma. You had your chance. They were smarter, meaner, and they hated us now. That's when things got darker. Forge's team in Detroit went silent. No explosion, no distress signal, just gone. Trigger broke a piece of machinery in half when he heard. Ghost didn't say a word, just loaded every mag he had one by one without blinking. "Where Ghost is now too," he finally muttered. "We moved our base to crashed alien transport in northern Canada. The cold helped cloak our heat signatures. Inside that broken ship, we studied their tech. I spent weeks learning their interface by watching dead aliens' fingers twitch. Their systems weren't so different from ours, just more arrogant. I cracked their local transmission nodes and found something unexpected. The council wasn't reporting the war to its own citizens. They were keeping it classified. Said Earth was still in soft resistance phase, that it was evolving per expectation. Lies. Why? Probably fear, probably pride. Either way, that was our window. Trigger had a theory. If we can broadcast a message off-world, make it clear Earth isn't just resisting, it's winning, they'll panic. Not the council, the people. So we hijacked a beacon array from one of their crashed observation towers. We recorded a transmission. Me standing in front of a half-burned American flag. Ghost holding a cracked helmet, Trigger, and Forge's names carved into steel. Behind me, I looked straight into the alien lens and said, "You said we'd fall in an hour. It's been a week. We're still here. Your fleets are ash, your foot soldiers rot in our soil. Keep sending more. We'll keep burying them. Earth doesn't surrender. Humanity doesn't kneel." Then Ghost leaned into the mic and whispered, "You invaded the wrong species. We sent that broadcast on every open council channel, and the universe heard it. They retaliated hard. Orbital strikes, coordinated extermination. Squads, no more mercy, no more posturing." But something had shifted. Alien citizens across the galaxy began questioning the invasion. Protests, subversive questions, even assassinations of low-tier council members. Whispers of rebellion in systems we'd never heard of. Back on Earth, we weren't celebrating. We were losing people daily. The cost was bleeding us dry, but we kept pushing. Because it was no longer about saving Earth, it was about showing them what humans do when pushed too far. The final blow came when Forge believed. Dead sent us a single shaky message. From orbit, he'd been captured, escaped, hijacked a council vessel with a team of prisoners, and was headed towards their data core. Deep space, high security, completely unbreachable. Except he breached it, his final act. He uploaded Earth's entire war archive. Every slaughter, every rebellion, every single minute we survived when we weren't supposed to. Millions watched it, billions questioned everything they'd been told, and then finally, the council fell silent. No more attacks, no more threats. They retreated, not because they were defeated by force, but because they were dismantled by fear. Fear of a species that refused to die. It didn't feel like a victory. Not when the skies cleared. Not when the council fell silent. Not even when their last signal, scrambled and distorted, blinked out from our hijacked surveillance array like a dying breath. In space, the world had stopped burning, yes, but the smoke hadn't cleared. The air still stank of ozone and scorched bone. Cities were still dead, families still gone. And the men who survived, men like me, we didn't know what to do with silence. We were built for war now, shaped by it, twisted by it. When the invasion ended, we didn't cheer. We just stood there, weapons in hand, waiting for the next thing to kill. Trigger was the first to crack. It happened 2 days after the final broadcast, when we got word the last council fleet had warped out of the system. We'd relocated to an old nuclear facility in rural Poland. Its walls still radiated enough to screw with. Council scans. He was sitting on a concrete slab, eyes locked on the cracked ceiling, fingers twitching like they were still squeezing a trigger. I tried talking to him. Normal stuff like food or weather. He didn't blink. Been too quiet, he finally said. I nodded. Yeah. No explosions, no gunfire, no comms from survivors. He rubbed the back of his neck. Feels like I'm dead and don't know it yet. I wanted to tell him we were alive, that we made it. But I didn't believe that anymore. Either. Survivor outposts started making contact. Not governments, those were gone, just clusters of civilians, ex-military, mercenaries, scavengers, some organized. Most didn't. In New Zealand, they were rebuilding, using salvaged alien tech. In Canada, they turned council drop pods into shelters. In Brazil, they'd found a way to convert alien plasma cores into heat generators. Humanity was doing what it always did, best adapting in pain. But we were fractured. Without a common enemy, we began turning inward again. Fights over territory, over tech, over who deserved to lead the new world. We'd been united by desperation, not trust. And that desperation was fading. Ghost and I tried to keep things together. Forge, he never made it back. His final act, hijacking the data core and leaking the truth across galaxies, made him a legend. Statues were already going up. The irony. He died to make peace happen. And we didn't know what the hell to do with it. 2 weeks after the ceasefire, I was approached by a woman in a patched-up council armor plate. Her name was Erin, and she wasn't human. She was council-born, but not loyal. I helped forge, she said, standing across from me in the cold bunker. Corridor, helmet tucked under her arm. Her skin had a faint shimmer, biotech woven into tissue. Eyes too perfect to be real. I raised my rifle anyway. I wouldn't, she said softly. I'm not your enemy. That's exactly what my enemy would say. Your enemy's gone, she replied. That's the problem. I didn't lower the weapon. You think that's a problem? Erin sighed and sat on a steel crate, like she belonged there. The council was a monster, yes, but it held the galaxy together with fear, with control, with precision. Now that it's gone, what replaces it? I didn't have an answer. No one did. That's when she said the words that made my blood freeze. Other species saw what you did, saw what humans are capable of. They're not going to stay quiet for long. Some want to punish Earth for humiliating the council. Others want to recruit you, use you. You're not free, you're just exposed. The war wasn't over, it had just gone dark. Erin wasn't alone. Over the next few days, more council defectors emerged, aliens who had watched the human uprising and realized their own chains. Some sought asylum. Others sought revenge against their former masters. And some wanted to learn how to fight. Like us, I hated them at first. Every fiber in my body wanted to kill anything with alien blood. I'd seen what they'd done. Heard my comrades screaming into broken radios before being incinerated. Mid-word. But hate is a prison, one I'd lived in too long. Ghost was the one who convinced me. Use them, he said flatly. They owe us more than they can ever repay. So we started teaching them not how to use weapons. Most already knew that. We taught them how to think like humans, how to fight dirty, how to use chaos, how to weaponize grief. We built a new force from the ashes, not an army, not yet, but a message to the rest of the galaxy. Earth isn't broken, Earth is reborn, and if you come for us again, you won't just lose, you'll vanish. Then came the final message from Forge. A delayed data packet, encrypted, buried deep in Council comm systems, only triggered once the Council's AI cores went fully offline. It took us a week to unlock it. It wasn't a strategy file. It wasn't instructions. It was a voice recording. His voice, tired, raspy, filled with that same quiet rage that had powered him through war. If you're hearing this, I didn't make it. No regrets. They were never going to let me live. I gave you a window. What you do with it, that's on you now. Don't become them. Don't let the fire that saved Earth burn it down from the inside. If you can build something better, do it. If not, then burn the stars before they burn you. I didn't cry. I don't think any of us did. The war had dried our tears long ago. But I felt it, deep down, like steel cracking under pressure. That message traveled farther than we expected. Within weeks, rebellion cells rose up in 3 council-controlled systems. Refugees poured toward Earth, not to conquer but to follow. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were a symbol. One night I stood alone in the remains of Chicago, staring up at a sky finally free of alien ships. Ghost approached, silent as ever. You think we're ready for what's next? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then We weren't ready the first time. Either. I nodded. And we won. No, he replied. We endured. That's different. And he was right. Victory implies finality. Endurance, that's a sentence with no period. The council thought they could predict humanity's fall. They measured our numbers, our weapons, our systems. But they never measured our madness, our fury, our capacity to adapt even as we burned. They came expecting a surrender. What they found was a species that fights long after the war is lost. A species that will not die quietly. And now the galaxy is watching. Let them watch, let them wonder, let them fear. Because Earth is no longer just a world. It's a warning. Power vacuums never stay empty, not in war, not in peace. It didn't take long after the council vanished for others to come crawling out of the dark. Fractured empires, pirate coalitions, rogue AIs, opportunistic species that had hidden in the council's shadow for centuries. They'd all seen the same footage, heard the same stories. Earth fought back, Earth survived. Earth doesn't die quietly. Some saw us as monsters, some saw us as heroes. But most, they saw us as a threat. The first delegation landed in what used to be Norway. The terrain was blackened, half frozen, with veins of alien scrap buried in the soil. We met them on a ridge that overlooked a crater the size of a city block. What was left of a failed orbital strike. They didn't wear armor, they didn't carry weapons. They walked like scholars, robes flowing, hands raised. We come with peace, the tallest one said, his voice filtered through translator mask. Ghost stood next to me, arms folded, his gaze cold as ever. I had my sidearm holstered but ready. You learn quickly not to trust the quiet ones, alien or human. You speak English, I said. We speak survival, he corrected, and survival means aligning with the strongest force in the system. That is you. I didn't smile, didn't blink. You think we're the strongest. I think you are the most dangerous. Smart. They offered alliance technology, information on council splinters that might be regrouping, a seat in what they called the Interstellar Reformation Pact, a shaky collective of species trying to keep the galaxy from ripping itself apart in the council's absence. But we didn't say yes. Not then. Earth had bled too much to bow to new alliances. We needed time, space. We needed to learn who we were without an enemy breathing down our necks. But time is a luxury war doesn't allow. By month 2, after the council retreat, the galaxy was fracturing faster than we could keep track. Council loyalists had gone underground, forming mercenary pacts known as Cleanser, specialists in destabilizing post-conflict worlds. They hit refugee ships, sabotaged peace stations, wiped out rebel colonies that had supported Earth during the war. One such attack hit a small colony on Mars, our colony, 2,000 civilians, scientists, engineers, all slaughtered. In less than 6 minutes, the only message left behind was a symbol, 3 vertical slashes burned into the colony's central tower. Ghost recognized it first. Council Shadow Unit, Tier 9 Cleanser. Class, it's a death mark, he muttered. Voice low, they're telling us Earth's not finished. Trigger, who had barely spoken since Forge's final message, finally snapped. We waited too long. And he was right. The Council hadn't learned to fear Earth, they just learned to hide from Us. And now they were bleeding us dry, one colony at a time. I called for a summit. Not governments. Those were gone. This was warlords, resistance leaders, tech barons, and survivors who'd taken power through force and flame. Most had blood on their hands. All had enemies. But they showed up. Some via hologram, some in person. Some covered in armor, others draped in cloth stitched from their fallen. I stood before them in what was left of Berlin. A massive stone slab acted as our table. Around us, the skeletal remains of old skyscrapers loomed like broken bones. We've proven we can survive, I told them. Now we decide if we're going to lead. Murmurs, growls, silent stares. We don't need another council, one growled. No, I agreed. But we need something. Because without structure, without unity, we're just targets wearing different flags. It was Iron who stepped forward. Still alien. Still distrusted. But the only one who had seen the council rot from the inside. They feared your unity more than your weapons, she said. That's why they fractured you first, if you want to finish this war, if you want to own what you've become, then unify. Not under a flag, under a code. That's how the idea of the Bastion was born. Not a government, not a military, a pact, a brotherhood. One rule: you bleed. For Earth, you are Earth. Within a month, 47 factions joined. Not all were human, some were defectors. Some were hybrids. Others were simply broken civilizations, looking for a purpose greater than survival. I led the first Bastion strike team. We hit a cleanser forward base hidden on the edge of the Saturn belt. They didn't see us coming. They thought we'd still be rebuilding. They were wrong. Ghosts sliced through their vanguard like a shadow. Trigger hacked their plasma gates with a device he built from scrap and spite. Iron used her alien physiology to bypass their biometric locks. And me. I pulled the trigger that dropped their command core into the void. We didn't leave survivors. Not because we were cruel. Because we remembered. We remembered the first hour, the first blood, the first screams. We remembered what they did to Forge. But even as the Bastion grew stronger, Earth grew colder. Peace doesn't heal everyone. It exposes the cracks. Cities became fortresses, trade routes turned into black markets. Civilians were becoming afraid of their own protectors. Soldiers like us weren't seen as heroes anymore. We were reminders of death, of chaos, of what Earth had become to survive. Trigger said it best during one of our debriefs. We built a world that only people like us can survive in. I couldn't argue, and then came the message. Not from the Council. Not from the galaxy, from Earth. A faction calling themselves the Purity line hijacked a Bastion relay tower and sent a wideband broadcast across the inner colonies. Their leader, a scarred ex-politician who'd gone underground during the invasion, stood in front of a burning banner and said, "Earth has been corrupted, contaminated by alien filth, by traitors, by those who traded humanity for survival. The war is over. It's time to clean house." They weren't talking about the Council. They were talking about us, about Bastion, about Iron, about any human who'd accepted an alien into their ranks or used alien tech, or dared to see the enemy as more than just prey. We'd saved the world, and now we were being branded as the Next thread. Part of me understood it. We had changed. War had made us monsters in ways we hadn't noticed. I used to sleep through silence. Now I could only fall asleep if something was humming, crackling, sparking nearby. I didn't have dreams anymore, just memory fragments, explosions, ash screams. Iron warned us this would happen. Your enemies will always return, she said. But the ones you must fear most are they ones who wear your face. Ghost and I stood on the edge of an old dam, overlooking a newly constructed bastion. Supply depot. He was quiet, smoking a twisted cigar. Made from alien herbs, only thing that kept his nerves calm now. What do you think happens next? I asked him. He exhaled smoke like he was exercising. A demon. Civil war, he said. Not tomorrow, but soon. And you? He looked at me with those tired, empty eyes. I'll fight whoever comes for my people. Human, alien, ghost, God doesn't matter. I nodded, because that was all we had left, not peace, not politics, just each other. Just the fight. The first shot of Earth's second war wasn't fired in space. It wasn't plasma, or lasers, or orbital strikes. It was a homemade bullet, fired point blank into the skull of a refugee girl who just arrived in a bastion camp outside of Athens. 12 years old. Half human, half council species, born in the chaos between invasions. She'd been carrying a ration pack and a hand-stitched toy. No uniform, no weapon, no threat. But to the Purity Line, that didn't matter. To them, she was a contamination. I arrived at the camp 20 hours later. The body was gone, but the blood was still there. A wide, dried smear across the stone path, like someone had tried to wash it, but gave up halfway through. Bastion forces stood silent, armored and still, unsure if they were at war or not. Ghost crouched near the blood, dragging 2 fingers through the red dirt like he was looking for something deeper than evidence. When I walked up, he didn't look at me. She didn't even scream, he said. She was holding the damn toy when she dropped. Trigger stood back, arms crossed, jaw tight. Purity Line left a message, carved it into the side of the depot. I turned towards the wall. The words were etched deep, crude but clear. You lost your soul to save your skin. Earth belongs to humans again. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't protest. It wasn't rebellion. It was war. The Purity Line wasn't an army. They were a sickness spreading through the cracks in Bastion's foundation, whispers in supply lines, propaganda in food crates, recruits turning ghost, officers found dead in their bunks, all quiet, all efficient. And the worst part, they weren't wrong about everything. That's what made them dangerous. Because somewhere in the rubble of victory, humanity had changed. Bastion had made alliances with ex-council species. We'd armed ourselves with alien tech. We'd adapted, evolved just like any survivors would, but survivors don't get statues. Survivors don't get happy endings. They get resentment. And resentment turns into bullets. We tried to push back quietly at first. Ghost ran counterintel teams, iron tracked coded comms bouncing off deep space satellites, tracing them back to old Earth radio towers buried in Siberia. Trigger even tried reaching out to old Purity sympathizers, hoping someone wanted to talk. No one talked. They just started killing. Faster, they bombed a Bastion mid-drop. In Istanbul. 97 dead, most of them sick or old. No survivors, just a black banner left behind with a single message. We do not share Earth. We knew what was coming next, so we stopped pretending peace was an option. We called it Operation Clean Wake. Full-scale sweep of known purity. Territories, burned forests in Central Europe, desert outposts in North Africa, snow-blasted mines in Alaska where they'd hijacked old council gear. No more warnings, no more restraint. I led the first strike team. Target an underground base outside Oslo, confirmed purity broadcasts. Civilians evacuated, no margin for compromise. We went in silent. Ghost took point, cloak active. Iron came in through the vents. Her alien bone structure could slip through narrow ducts like smoke, trigger rigged. The outer perimeter with EMP mines to prevent escape. What we didn't expect was what we found. Inside, the base wasn't full of soldiers, it was full of children. Dozens of them, dirty, starving, some with weapons, most with nothing but old human flags wrapped around their shoulders like blankets. Trigger lowered his rifle first. What the hell is this? Ghost didn't speak, just scanned the room slowly. A small boy stepped forward. Blonde, maybe 10. Face smeared with oil. He looked at me like he knew my name. They said you'd come, he whispered. The traitors always do. I stepped forward slow. Who said? He blinked calm. The father. My stomach twisted. I'd heard rumors. A man only called father. Ex-UN. Disappeared during the council siege. Resurfaced later with a cult-like grip on purity cells. He was the one preaching that Earth must be cleansed, that humans who collaborated were no longer human at all. That bastion was the final virus. I knelt beside the boy. Where is he? The kid didn't smile, didn't flinch. He's already here. That's when the roof collapsed. Trigger shouted, dragging the boy back. Ghost rolled into cover. Iron screamed through the comms. Ambush. Detonators in the vents. The ceiling tore open, raining steel and dirt, and from above came the purity. Soldiers, black armor, no insignia. No rank, just smooth helmets and rifles. Set to shred. They didn't shout, they didn't speak. They executed. 2 of our squad died in the first wave. A third bled out before we could reach him. I fired until my rifle overheated, then switched to sidearm, then blade. By the time it ended, the base was rubble. So were we. We got out with 6 survivors. The children were taken by purity evac teams through hidden tunnels. It had been a trap. Not to kill us, but to break us. To show us they controlled the narrative. That they had Earth's future in their hands. And they weren't entirely wrong. Back at Bastion HQ, an old council control ship buried in the Pacific Trench, we held emergency council. I stood before the war table, watching leaders argue, alien defectors on one side, human battalion chiefs on the other. Accusations, blame, fear. Ghost leaned in beside me. We're losing them. I know. They don't trust each other anymore. I looked around the room. Trigger pacing in the corner, Iron standing alone, helmet in hand, eyes glassy. We'd won the war against the council, but we were losing the war for ourselves. That night I sat alone in my quarters, staring at an old photograph. Me and Forge, back before everything. Before blood, before betrayal. He had a beer in his hand and a broken rib from bar fighting a cargo pilot over ration prices. I haven't smiled like that in years. A light knock at the door broke the silence. Iron entered. Quiet, tense. They're planning to vote. Vote on what? She hesitated then. Whether to expel non-humans from Bastion Command. I laughed bitterly. So this is it. She looked tired. They're afraid and fear is louder than truth. I stood, walked to the small window, where the ocean shimmered in unnatural colors from the council ship's lights. Let them vote, I said. If they betray the very people who help save Earth, then maybe they don't deserve it. She stepped forward. And if they vote to keep us, I looked at her. Then we prepare. Because purity won't wait. The next morning the vote passed. Barely. By 2 voices, Iron kept her place. The alien stayed in command, but the message was clear, trust was fading. And when trust dies, the war comes back we never built. Bastion to last, it wasn't a government. It wasn't a dream, it was a wall at last. Defense against extinction, and like all walls it cracked the moment the pressure came from within. The vote to keep alien allies in command should have ended the debate, it didn't. If anything, it made it worse. Within hours of the announcement, 3 Bastion outposts declared neutrality. A 4th went silent entirely, no comms, no activity, no pings from drone patrols. Trigger ran a data trace and found out why. They killed their own command team, he muttered, staring at the monitor. 6 officers executed. Ghost looked over his shoulder. Where? Trigger hesitated. Detroit sector. That was one of ours. We called it a fracture, but it was more than that. It was a break in the soul of what we'd tried to build. The purity line wasn't hiding anymore. They were no longer sabotage squads, whispering through bunkers. They were out in the open now, marching, broadcasting, holding rallies in broken cities, standing in front of scorched Earth monuments with old flags and false promises. Earth for Earthborn, they screamed. But what they meant was Earth for them. Not the rest of us who bled and broke to save it, not Iron, not me. We knew the first real battle was coming, not skirmishes, not base ambushes, war. So we picked the field. Bastion HQ detected a massive weapons build-up in the Colorado Dead Zone. A city-sized crater left behind by the Council's last orbital strike. It was desolate, no structures, just ash, metal, and bones. But perfect for a staging ground. Our intel was clear. The father would be there, leading the charge himself. This was our only chance. Take him out, and the rest of the purity line would fracture under its own weight, or so we hoped. We mobilized everything we had. 200 Bastion soldiers, 40 mechs, dozens of ex-council fighters armored and ready. Iron coordinated the drops. Ghost led the flanking units. Trigger rode point in a heavily modified hover tank with a railgun made from scavenged orbital scrap and a prayer. Me. I led the front line. The air over Colorado was thick with dust and static as we descended. Burnt sky, no birds, no wind, just silence and the feeling that this wasn't a battle, it was a reckoning. We touched down just after nightfall. The terrain felt haunted, not just from the war but from something older, something angrier, as if the ground itself resented being walked on again. Ghost moved like a shadow ahead of us, scanning for traps. Iron stayed by my side, her eyes glowing, faintly in the dark, feeding live telemetry into my HUD. Multiple life signs, 30 clicks east. She said. Confirmed, trigger buzzed through the comms. Looks like they're digging in. Heavy emplacement, shielded units. I clicked on my comm. We go loud in 5. We hit them with everything, mortars, EMP rounds, plasma blasts, our mech. Units tore through the first Purity line, like fire through dry grass, but they were ready. Purity counterattacked with X-Bastion. Gear, stolen rifles, jammers, tanks we'd left behind months ago. They knew our tactics, our formations, our weaknesses, because they were us. Once the fight turned brutal. Hand-to-hand in the trenches, blades, fisted teeth. Ghost disappeared for a full hour. We thought he was dead, then reappeared, dragging 3 Purity operatives behind him, bloodied but alive. Interrogation later, he said, right. Now back we end this. Then came the fire, not ours, theirs. A tower rose from the ash, black steel, ancient, humming with unstable energy. Iron froze beside me. That's not human. Tech Council, I asked. No. Her voice dropped. Worse, something buried, something older. The tower pulsed. A red wave spread across the battlefield, weapons fried. HUDs glitched, soldiers screamed as their implants went haywire. I felt my own pulse skip, like my body had been unplugged from itself for a split second. Pull back, I yelled. Back to line 3. But it was too late. From the shadows of that tower came the father. He walked without armor, no mask, just a long black coat and dead eyes. His voice crackled over every channel, every speaker, every earpiece. This is the consequence of compromise. You let them in, you let them chain. You let them poison the earth. Now we will purify it with fire. He activated something, a signal, a trigger. Dozens of Purity soldiers dropped to their knees and began to scream. Their bodies convulsed, skin tore, machines embedded in their spines exploded outward into tendrils of energy and armor, not human, not alien, something else. They became hybrids, mutations, weapons. Their eyes went white, their minds were gone. They charged. We'd seen horror before, but this was madness. These things didn't bleed, they didn't slow down, they tore through our lines like knives through paper. One of our mechs went down in 10 seconds, ripped open like a tin can. Ghost opened fire with a grenade launcher. Trigger overloaded his railgun and fired point blank, vaporizing 3 of them. Iron launched an antimatter round that collapsed a section of the crater entirely. Still they kept coming. We fell back to the southern ridge. And that's when I made the call. Drop the fail-safe. Iron looked at me. That'll take out both sides. I stared down at the battlefield, at the monsters we'd once called brothers, at the tower that screamed like it was alive, at the line we could never cross again. I know. The fail-safe was a last resort device, a gravity bomb designed by Forge before he died. It didn't just explode, it collapsed everything, space, matter, sound, time. We'd never tested it until now. Trigger wired it, Ghost planted it. Iron calculated the blast radius to give us 45 seconds. That was all. We ran through blood and smoke and screams, through memories, through guilt. The ridge trembled beneath us as the fail-safe began to hum, a low vibration. Deep and final. I looked back one last time at the monsters, at the father standing unmoved, at the tower still pulsing, and I whispered, "This is your Earth now." Then the world collapsed. We woke up 3 days later, buried in a collapsed med station, half dead, half mad. Ghost had a broken leg. Trigger lost hearing in one ear, irons. Skin was cracked down her arms like glass under pressure, but we were alive. And the tower was gone, so was the father, and so was the purity line. Cost, 200 Bastion soldiers, 8 cities. Caught in the shockwave. And something deeper, trust. Even within our own surviving forces. Whispers started that I'd gone too far. That I'd used alien weapons, alien allies, alien methods, that maybe I was the threat now, that maybe Bastion needed purifying too. I sat alone in the crater one night, breathing in dust, watching the stars. Trigger limped up beside me, smoking whatever passed for a cigarette these days. "That's twice now," he said. "Twice Earth nearly died." I nodded. "You think it'll survive the third?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. After the collapse at Colorado, silence spread like a virus. It wasn't peace. It wasn't relief. It was fear pretending to be quiet. The purity line was gone, burned to ash by a fail-safe we never wanted to use. The father was presumed dead, though no one had found a body. And the mutated hybrids he'd unleashed had been erased in the implosion. But you don't kill ideology with bombs. You bury it and it grows underground, like roots cracking stone. Bastion was a shell of itself. We still had soldiers, still had weapons, still controlled the largest piece of ex-council tech on Earth. But the heart, the trust, the unity that made Bastion more than just firepower. Gone. Whole units deserted, supply convoys never made it to the outer zones. Defectors, both alien and human, started carving out their own safe havens. Little empires, micro-dictatorships, whatever you want to call them, they were fragmenting us faster than purity ever could. It turns out when you kill a fanatic, you create martyrs. And when you kill 100, you build religion. The whispers started first. Commanders compromised. He used the failsafe too easily. Forge would have never allowed this. I heard them in the halls, in mess rooms, in calm traffic when they thought I wasn't listening. Even Ghost kept his distance. After Colorado, we'd fought together in dirt, ash, and fire. But now he looked at me like I was something else. Not human. Not alien. Just dangerous. Erin remained by my side. Her arms were still healing, veins lit faintly from energy trauma, skin peeling like dried leaves. She should have been in stasis. Should have let medical AI resequence her cells. But she wouldn't leave me alone in the dark. "You know they'll come for you," she said one night, voice low. "Who?" "Your own." I didn't deny it. She stared through the window at the shattered coastline, water glowing faintly from submerged tech. "You can still walk away." I looked at her. "Where?" Her eyes met mine. "Anywhere. As long as it's not here." But this was my grave. I knew that. I dug it the moment I pressed that fail-safe trigger. The first betrayal came from inside the war room. Trigger. He'd been quiet since Colorado. Withdrawn, cagey, always muttering under his breath. We thought it was trauma, maybe guilt. Maybe just him finally snapping after everything. We were wrong. It was planning. He leaked mission codes to a rogue Bastion splinter in Moscow. Former tacticians who believed in strategic separation, a polite way of saying a new chain of command without me in it. They attacked an aid convoy headed for Asia Sector 4. 35 medics. 5 children. All dead. Trigger didn't flinch when confronted. You made us monsters, he said, leaning against the interrogation wall, calm as steel. I just gave them permission to stop pretending. Ghost was there. He wanted to shoot him right there, point blank. But I couldn't let that happen. Because if we started killing each other in rooms like this, behind closed doors, with no trial, no chain of justice, then Bastion truly was gone. So I locked Trigger in the ship's brig. Deep level. Maximum security. I visited him once before the door. Sealed. He didn't beg. Didn't explain. Just stared at me with disappointment. I followed you through hell, he said. Now you're dragging us into the void. Then he turned his back. The council met again. What was left of it anyway? 3 human leaders. 2 non-human. And me. Erin sat beside me as a representative. Now not just a soldier. She wore formal armor, fractured plates, reforged with human alloys, glowing. Veins dulled down to avoid sparking. Panic. The discussion was bloodless, but tension was suffocating. We need elections, someone said. For what? Ghost snapped. We're still in recovery. We hold elections and Bastion dies. Too many factions. Too many loyalties. So we just keep following him, the Asian sector rep asked, pointing to me. A commander who flattens half a continent to stop a cult. I said nothing, because nothing I said would matter anymore. The vote passed. Leadership would dissolve elections. Would begin in 30 days. I didn't run. Didn't protest, didn't care. The idea of leading this shattered, paranoid, half-militarized planet made me sick now. Let someone else wear the target. But Earth didn't give us 30 days, not even close. Because just as the cracks in Bastion became unhideable, something came from beyond the stars, not a fleet, not weapons. A message simple, short, from a species we'd never heard of, transmitted in every language we'd ever used. We saw what you did to the council. We saw what you did to yourselves. And we're coming. That message broke whatever remained of the illusion. Ghost slammed his fist into the wall. When he read it, another war, another damn war. Erin's face was pale. This species. They were beneath the council, exiled. Considered unstable even by the worst civilizations. Who are they? I asked. She whispered the name like a curse. The Null. A predatory nomadic race cut off from the galactic core centuries ago. Not because they lost, but because they terrified everyone. They didn't conquer for resources, they conquered for experiments. They saw war as a study, pain as data. Their ships weren't fleets, they were labs, and Earth was now the control group. The council went into panic mode. The election was suspended, Bastion forces remobilized, old bunkers reopened, systems rebooted, orbital arrays recharged for the first time in months. Everyone stopped fighting each other because something worse was on the way. And this time we didn't know if we could survive it. That night I walked into Trigger's cell. He was lying on the floor, eyes half shut, thin, starved. You heard it, I asked. He nodded. The Nal. Another nod. I need you, I said. He didn't move. You're the only one who knows how to build a defense net fast enough and dirty enough and smart enough to actually work. He looked up at me slowly. Why now? Because we don't have a choice anymore. He sat up, cracking his neck. I told you were dragging us into the void, he said. Guess I better build us a damn flashlight. We freed him, rearmed him, put him at the head of Bastion. Engineering people protested. I didn't care. We were at the edge of something bigger than any of us, and now we had 6 days to prepare. The Nal didn't arrive with noise. They arrived with silence. No mass fleet, no orbital bombardment, no posturing, just a shadow across our outer solar drift anomalies, gravitational echoes, light being absorbed rather than reflected. Trigger called it a perfect tactical intro. They're not trying to intimidate us. He said they're watching, measuring, waiting to see how we respond. He'd changed since his time in the brig. He wasn't angry anymore, just focused. Calm, like the betrayal had burned out whatever part of him cared about politics. Ghost returned to the front lines, but he spoke less. His limp had gotten worse, but he refused augmentation. Pain keeps me sharp, he muttered. Erin. She spent more time in the data cores, now digging into ancient council archives, looking for scraps on the Nal, warnings, reports, anything. She found one entry, buried in a flagged black site file, titled in council script, "Do not engage under any circumstance." By day 3, the anomalies reached the Kuiper Belt. Then Pluto vanished, just gone. 1 minute it was there, broadcasting faint signals from our monitoring station. The next, static. Trigger ran diagnostics. It's not destroyed, he said. It's displaced. Like it was moved. Ghost leaned over the data. They're showing us what they can do without firing a shot. I looked at the blinking void where Pluto's data feed used to be. They want us scared. We called a planetary alert. Bastion forces rearmed, defectors returned, apologies unspoken but understood. Even the remnants of the Purity line. Leaderless, shattered scent. Transmissions offering temporary alliance. If Earth dies, ideology doesn't matter. We accepted them. All of them. Because when your species is facing extinction, you stop counting sins. You start counting survivors. On day 4, the Nal sent us their first and only message. No visuals, no sound, just a data stream. Mathematical equations, DNA sequences, neural patterns, weapon schematics. Trigger translated it under 2 hours. It's everything about us, he said. Pale. Everything they've learned from us. Every way to destroy us, every pressure point, every vulnerability, every instinct. Iron finished decoding the last sequencer. They're not just invading, they're building a model. Ghost stared at the screen. They want to see what happens when they push it. And then the sky broke. They didn't attack like the council. They didn't drop ships or soldiers. They rewrote physics. The upper atmosphere shimmered and tore like plastic under a flame. Entire Bastion. Satellites blinked out. Orbital defenses disintegrated mid-calculation. Our smartest AIs tried to track movement, then melted down from paradox loops. I watched a Bastion destroyer, 20 km wide, powered by fusion cells and human stubbornness, fold in half like paper and disappear into itself. No explosion, just gone. But we didn't break. Not this time, because we finally understood they were testing, so we gave them the wrong answers. Trigger activated the false defense net. 2,000 fake heat signatures spread across the planet, mimicking anti-air turrets and phantom nukes. Iron unleashed a virus based on null code, broadcasting randomized chaos across the spectrum, confusing their models. And Ghost built a trap, not a weapon, a mirror. We found a null observation probe, tiny hovering drone the size of a coin, nearly invisible to the naked eye. Ghost figured out how it transmitted. So he sent a loop. Images, footage, simulated outcomes, all of Earth already destroyed, skies burning, cities flattened, survivors executed. And we looped it back to them. We told the null their experiment had already succeeded, that Earth was gone. For a moment, just a moment, it worked. The sky froze, no movement, no anomalies, no new gravity spikes. We sat in command, sweating in silence, unsure if we just bought time or invited wrath. That's when Iron stood up, trembling. They're coming down. One vessel, that's all it took. It broke through the atmosphere like a knife. Through oil, no sonic boom, no fire. Just displacement, trees bent without wind, oceans rippled without waves. Gravity forgot what it was. The ship landed in the center of the Sahara. We didn't send a strike team. We sent me. Alone. Unarmed. They didn't ask for peace. They didn't ask for surrender. What stood in that crater was something in between. Not alien, not machine, not flesh. It looked almost human, tall, pale, eyes like glass marbles filled with storm clouds, no mouth, just lines across the face like cracked porcelain. It didn't speak, it sent thought, pure, raw emotion into my skull, not words. Concepts. You are chaos, you defy pattern. You were not meant to win. And I answered out loud, voice rough. We weren't meant to lose either. The being tilted its head, curious. Why fight when defeat is certain? I smiled. Because that's what makes us human. It reached out, long fingers each one, ending in a fractal shimmer, touched my forehead, and for a split second I saw everything, alternate timelines, dead Earths, councils that won, councils that lost, humanity enslaved, humanity extinct, humanity broken by our own hands, all of it real, all of it possible, all of it studied. The null didn't want war, they wanted certainty, and we couldn't give it to them, so they feared us. When it pulled its hand back, something had changed. The sky above shifted. Ship behind it began to break apart, not explode, not vanish. Just cease, piece by piece, folded back into wherever it had come from. The being looked at me one last time. Unstable, unquantifiable. You are not the control, you are the variable. And then it was gone. I woke up 3 days later in a medical pod. IVs in both arms, Iron standing beside me. They left, she whispered. No trace, no message. Trigger walked in, nodding. Signal silence across all systems. They're gone. Ghost stood in the back, arms folded, eyes unreadable. You scared them, he said. No, I corrected. We confused them. Bastion held elections. I didn't run. Trigger did. He lost. Ghost declined to vote. Iron disappeared 3 weeks later. Left a note. You were never meant to survive, but you did. Now choose what kind of world you're building from the ashes. Years passed. Earth rebuilt, slow, ugly. Honest, not a paradise, not a utopia. But real, scars and all, I still walk. The ruins some nights, old war zones. Forgotten bunkers, graves without names. Sometimes I think of the council. Sometimes I think of the Father. But mostly, I think of the moment I looked to God in the eye and told it no. They thought we'd fall in hours. We ended the war in minutes, but truth, we were never meant to survive the war. We were meant to be the war. And somehow, we won anyway.